The primary issue before the full County Council tomorrow will be the lawn chemicals bill. 5 council members circulated a memorandum on Friday detailing what I hope will be the final outline of a bill, and that memo is available from my staff. We will delay, assuming that this is the final outcome and that 5 council members or more approve it, we will delay implementation until January 1st, 2017 for homeowners. So there would be a year for the Department of Environmental Protection to develop public education campaign. We will also have very clear signage in stores where these chemicals are sold to make it clear what county law permits and does not permit. And with respect to the parks, we will be asking the Parks Department to come up with a plan for the elimination of pesticides. We are not mandating that they immediately eliminate them. So my best sense is that the 5 of us will carry the day with this bill, and I think it will make a major statement nationally that communities are speaking up against pollution in their water supply and chemicals that affect the bee population and that have adverse effects on our children and our pets. And I do anticipate that other communities will take note and follow the lead of a majority of Canadian provinces on this. So I know that the lawn care companies are exercised, but in Canada, lawn care has continued to thrive even after the passage of similar laws, and I think the lawn care providers will find healthy and organic and natural ways to maintain lawns, and I would anticipate that even more consumers may be looking for professional help if they learn that some things that are available over the counter, off the shelf, are not legal to use. It may result in an increase in phone calls to lawn care companies. So I think, although I understand there are hard feelings of those who are against the bill, I think in the long run, as with many groundbreaking policy initiatives that we take, I think it's going to work out to our benefit. Last week, the Government Operations Committee held a very important meeting with the Board of Elections. Councilmember Tom Hucker is here. Mr. Hucker's questions elicited made clear an apparent violation of the open meetings law by the Board of Elections. This is a technical issue, the question of where early voting sites will be located, and it's certainly possible that not a lot of voters will follow it closely, but it is an abuse of voters and taxpayers, and I do hope that the public will pay attention. We can't have shenanigans in the implementation of our election law. The law is clear that the identification of early voting sites should connect to population density. And I represent every neighborhood in Montgomery County, including Brookville. It's a very pleasant community. It absolutely does not have the population density to warrant an early voting site. To move that site away from Burtonsville is just a clear abuse of voters and taxpayers. And finally, I had a good weekend. I want to thank Holy Cross Hospital, Johns Hopkins Suburban Hospital, and Montgomery MedStar Medical Center for donating a substantial amount of medical equipment and supplies that we are shipping to Morazan, El Salvador, Montgomery County's sister city. I'll be accompanying County Executive Leggett on our second sister city visit to Morazan, and I'm very gratified to say that I've had a lot of success in getting donated equipment, supplies, and money, and we are trying to crowdfund the hospital. This is a good cause, and I can personally vouch that all funds contributed will be used solely to improve public health infrastructure in this impoverished municipality in El Salvador. So it's a good cause. The money will be well spent, and none of the overhead is being paid out of your contribution. If you choose to make a contribution to Montgomery Sister Cities campaign, all of it will be used for public health infrastructure in Morazan. So I will take any of your questions, find out what's on your minds.
Have you looked at the economic impact of the switching over to the organic or alternative chemicals, like what it will mean for businesses in that sector?
My understanding from lawn care practitioners is that moving away from regular application of poison to the yard in the direction of more frequent aerating, seeding, and better, smarter mowing with sharper blades may cost a little more money in the first year or two, but over the life cycle of a lawn, it'll actually cost substantially less. Application of poison chemicals is expensive. So there are costs associated with the chemical applications. And no, we've not done an economic analysis. As with many initiatives that we take to protect public health and safety, often the companies that are affected exaggerate, how devastating it will be. And in 2003, the big controversial issue we dealt with was prohibiting smoking in bars and restaurants. And had the predictions been true at that time, you wouldn't be able to get a meal out in Montgomery County. All the bars and restaurants would have closed because of the small percentage of smokers who frequented those establishments. I think overwhelmingly the public now appreciates the fact that bars and restaurants are smoke-free. I think overwhelmingly the public will appreciate that poison is not being applied to neighbors' lawns. We've heard from substantially more county residents in favor of the bill than we have opposed to the bill.
Can you speak at all to any progress or any further action with the police body camera programs that's happening?
At 2 o'clock today, the Public Safety Committee will meet jointly with the Education Committee, and they will get an update on the efforts by the police to implement a body camera program while respecting privacy. They'll be developing protocols that will identify when the video can be accessed by the public through the Public Information Act. So there's a balancing act between individuals' privacy rights and especially minors' privacy rights and the right of the public to monitor the police. And so finding that balance is the challenge nationally. It's the challenge that a state commission has been working on, and there will be an in-depth discussion of that this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
In regards to this public education campaign on pesticides, about 3 weeks ago over the phone you told me the public's attention span and willingness to listen to messages from local government is questionable. Has your opinion on that changed a bit?
I think it's always difficult to have a conversation with the public. You can't just pick up the phone and say, I'd like to talk to the public. For individuals who have been using these chemicals and purchasing them themselves, there will be new signage at the hardware store next time you go to buy them. For lawn care companies, that's the easiest to monitor because they already are extensively monitored in their use of chemicals. So for the lawn care companies, it'll be the easiest to enforce and make sure that they're complying with the law.
What in this, that the five of you have come up with this agreement, what is it going to say? How is it different than what the council committee that took it up passed?
Well, it differs from the introduced bill in that it would prohibit the use of toxic chemicals on people's lawns. Because of the length of time that this debate has taken, we've agreed to extend by 1 year the effective date. The committee's recommendation does not prohibit the use of these chemicals on private lawns at all. So that's the most significant difference. In terms of giving the Parks Department a few more years and some leeway to come up with a plan for the elimination of toxic chemicals, the 5 council members' proposal is relatively similar to what the committee approved. The committee said engage in a pilot program to the Parks Department. We agree with that, but we give a date certain by which the plan has to be, and to call for the elimination of pesticides.
There was an attorney general's opinion, though, that this might violate state law, or that state law has some sort of oversight of this. How does this new agreement fit in with that attorney general's opinion?
In response to a request from a delegate, an assistant attorney general opined that if we are sued, we might lose. That is always true. We might be sued anytime, and the outcome of any suit is never certain. Our legal staff does not believe that Montgomery County is preempted in this area, and others who have looked at it do not believe that we're preempted in this area. We don't know whether we'll be sued, but the risk always exists, and you never know what the outcome will be. In my judgment, based on the advice of our legal staff, we are not preempted from legislating in this area.
On the camera issue, how was the pilot program, what have you found in the pilot program for the department as a whole, and is that sort of mirrored in the issue of getting them in the schools as well?
Well, I don't know that we've found much yet. They're just beginning to roll out the program, and in general, our police department is really very enlightened, and I don't think we've encountered the kind of friction between Montgomery County Police and community members that other communities have experienced. I think we generally have good relations, but implementing body cameras is a way to make sure that we continue to have good relations and that we have evidence if something goes wrong. But we've been very fortunate here in Montgomery County And the leadership of our police department, I think, is very conscientious, listening carefully, responsive to community concerns. So, as I say, we're an enlightened and fortunate community. Yes, sir.
How do you expect the public to look at the pesticide program when the county exempts itself?
The county does not exempt itself.
Well, okay, when Parks is given more years leeway than the public has, how do you expect the public to comply if they see it as, well, you guys aren't doing it, so why should I?
There are different uses and there are different measurements by which you determine whether something is an essential use. Playing fields get a great deal of use, and so maintenance of playing fields is a different matter than someone's own lawn. I would have preferred to eliminate pesticides right away in the parks, but that's not what a majority of council members is seeking right at this time. And I've said consistently that I want to have the strongest protective measure that will command a majority of votes from council members, and that's what we're working towards.
Another competing, or not a competing, but another proposal that came out from another council member wanted to do this in more of a step-by-step fashion over a longer period of time, more years. Why is it, in your opinion, more important to go all in on this at once instead of a step-by-step process?
I am persuaded by hundreds and hundreds of reports I've received of children and pets experiencing adverse effects from the application of pesticides. I am persuaded by many, many reports of constituents who suffer multiple chemical sensitivity, suffer respiratory diseases, suffer asthma, and the application of pesticides on nearby yards triggers these health conditions. I respect the rights of property owners to maintain their own property. I don't think a property owner has the right to inflict harm on adjacent property owners. And so I think the sooner we can stop the use of these toxic chemicals, which are not necessary for the maintenance of a green and healthy lawn, the better.
Under this new agreement, when would the Parks Department have to comply with it?
It's 2021, I think it has to be. Yeah, here we go. I've got the memo here. By 2020. The Parks Department must develop a plan for transitioning to the maintenance of all playing fields without registered pesticides by 2020. We must have the plan by 2020.
Back to body cameras, one of the things.
I'm sorry, let me be clear on this. By 2020, there would be no registered pesticides in playing fields.
Okay. Back to the body cameras, though, putting them in schools with school resource officers. How do you, should they have them, and how do you do this, considering there are tons of privacy concerns with this because minors would be involved?
Well, yes, but also in other communities, some of the incidents that gave rise to the Black Lives Matter movement affected minors as well. So I'm not going myself in this press conference to lay out exactly what the protocol will be. There's a lot of work being done on that, and they're striving to achieve the right balance between the rights of the public to monitor police activity and the rights of individuals to maintain their privacy, and that protocol will be discussed today at 2 o'clock.
Getting back to pesticides, how do people know what pesticide is allowed? Some things that are called pesticides are actually just nitrogen, which may not be a pesticide, it's a nutrient.
Sure.
How are people gonna know?
If individuals are purchasing the chemicals themselves and treating their lawns themselves, then retailers in Montgomery County who sell those materials will be required to have signage very clearly explaining to the consumer what is allowed and for what purpose. The largest applicators of these chemicals are the lawn care companies, and that in that sector, enforcement will really be quite easy. They're already well informed, and they will know what they're legally allowed to use.
Any implications for snow removal products?
Implications for snow removal products. We've not addressed anything with snow removal products. And I'm not aware that any council members discussing that at this point.
So the sale of them wouldn't be banned, it would just the use of them would be banned.
The use would be banned for lawns. The use would not be banned for a variety of exceptions in the bill. Noxious weeds, invasive species, stinging and biting insects. So, you know, there are approved uses, and then there are non-essential uses which would be prohibited.
You mentioned that this affects honeybees. Talk about that, these pesticides.
It is widely believed that planet Earth is experiencing bee population collapse, and that is linked to the application of neonicotinoid substances, which are used extensively in pesticide applications. So that's a extreme issue of concern, and I think community members want to see us acting locally at the local level to move Montgomery County, continue in the direction of being the safest, healthiest, cleanest county in the United States. Any other questions?
Do you know if any other places in the U.S. that would have something like this on their books?
A majority of provinces in Canada have a similar law in place. We will be the first and largest jurisdiction in the United States to follow the lead of the Canadian provinces. The city of Tacoma Park has a similar law in place. Anything else? All right, thank you all for being here.